Hey, Daddy, this is the man of the champions, Bill Fonzie Alfonso, giving a shout out to
Something else.
something else, Daddy.
This is Nickel Matata, Great Warrior Wolf, and you are listening to Something Else.
I'm Tony Cini, and you're listening to Something Else.
Hey everybody, it's Rich Palladino, the voice of New England, and you are listening to Something Else with Aria.
And welcome to episode number 208 of Something Else. Feast your heroes on this week's episode as we take a look at NWA Total Nonstop Action, episode number 53 from July 9th, 2003. My name is Aria, and joining me, as always, is the Simon Diamond to my Johnny Swinger. It's Cindy. Cindy, how the hell are you doing today?
I'm actually doing all right. A couple last week, I actually went to a Mariners game and we sat with work, and I actually sat in a suite.
It didn't get rained out?
No,
I mean, it's Seattle. I just assume it's a nonstop storm over there.
no. You're thinking of Texas.
Well, I'm not going to be in Texas either anytime soon.
Well, neither am I.
Speaking of Texas, are you going to Y'all In this weekend?
No.
Neither am I. I tend to not go places that are not trans friendly. Hence why my trip to WrestleMania this year was not a cross-country road trip as originally planned. Oh, Lord. Anywho, not this is going to be one of those deleted scenes kind of thing. I was dying during the intro of the show this week. I took a swig of my drink and it went down the wrong pipe hole, and I was choking for about 40 of those 44 seconds that the intro lasts. I literally stopped choking long enough to unmute myself and say, "Welcome to the show." Hence why if I sounded weird, that's why I sounded weird.
I was so close to taking over. Me and Trey would have done magic with Smoky Mountain.
Oh, have you watched any of these Smoky Mountain shows? They're good shit.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
have. I recently saw the clip of Tammy Fitch. I have to say Fitch because that's her name in Smoky Mountain.
Tammy Witch with a capital B.
Yeah.
You watched the clip that I posted on the YouTube channel
Hmm.
of Tammy Fitch and Dirty White Girl training for their mixed tag match?
Kind of makes me want to see that mixed tag match, but I'm assuming that took place in a super show where there really wasn't a...
My guess is they're going to show some footage of it at some point because they usually do, but it was all throughout Golden Week 94, which is a series of house shows. But yeah. Yeah, basically, if you want to watch some really good shit, Mid-South 84 and Smoky Mountain 94, and the rest of it, skip it.
I'm actually in the middle of
I-
watching early WCW 94.
Actually, Gino Hernandez just showed up in World Class 84. So even if the rest of it is repetitive and redundant horseshit, Gino Hernandez is must-see TV.
Good.
Yes. Only like 19 months till he dies. Spoiler alert.
God, world class.
But by the way, I know that the Trey show is usually the one where we go horribly off topic. But you've been watching wrestling a long ass time, right?
Yep.
So here's a question for you. When Gorilla Monsoon became WWF president in 95, why didn't he make sure there were two referees for every tag team match? When he was doing commentary, he would not shut the fuck up about how every tag team match should have two referees. And then when he had the power to do that, he didn't do it.
Well, it was WWF circa 1995. They probably couldn't afford two refs at the same time.
Oh, Lord. I was going to say they could have sent Joey Morello out, but he died in a car accident. The spirit of Joey Morella probably was the second referee.
Well, that explains a lot of the decisions in the new gen era. Anyway,
Yes. One second, I gotta send this to Trey.
dear
Okay.
Trey, Cindy is talking out of her ass again. I can't wait until we talk about World Class and Smoky Mountain again to get some brain bleach in my skull.
I didn't realize that you hacked into my Facebook Messenger. Um, so yeah, before we dive into this week's shit show, let's tell you about what else is happening in the world of TNA, at least the world of TNA outside the ring. So the big TNA news this week, Jeff Jarrett is toying with the idea of putting the guys under exclusive contracts and then making money by booking them out to other companies. Another idea he is toying with is to run a weekly Thursday night spot show, more as a way to give the younger guys more reps, which is not a bad idea in theory, as long as Panda is willing to pay for it. But as you'll find out, because it never happens, Panda wasn't willing to pay for it. Plus, part of the issue is that it would have it wouldn't have just cost the TNA extra money to do this. It also would have cost the boys money because they wouldn't be able to charge the fees that they normally do to indie promoters. TNA would get those fees and then pay the guys whatever nominal fee that they were going to pay. So it wouldn't work out for them in the long run. Now, of course, we'll see that'll change in a little while because, TNA will become bigger and be able to sign people and give them a decent enough wage so they don't have to have this situation going on.
Right, and this
The other,
would start like 2005. It had to be when they got on Spike.
I would say it had to have been 2004 even, but definitely by 2005 because Spike wasn't going to, uh, you know, want a whole bunch of guys on their show that could just leave tomorrow. And show up in WWE the next day. Because if you don't think Vince McMahon, if he was able to, would have signed AJ Styles, Christopher Daniels, AMW, and basically all the top workers in TNA, if he had the ability to in 2005, you are a naive little person.
That's why
Um,
the territories died.
Hell, they spent 2 years burying Monty Brown because there was a rumor that Monty Brown wanted to go to WWE after his contract expired in 2006. And this was at the beginning of 2005, which is the answer to the question, why doesn't Monty Brown ever win the NWA title? It's because in 2 years, he may leave to go to WWE. That literally was the reason.
And
That's
yet
also why
Monty
they turned him
Brown's
heel.
and also why Monty Brown is one of the best human beings in the world because of what happened in after WWE in
Yep.
May of 2007.
It was after the Benoit thing. I don't know if he ever came back to wrestle after the Benoit thing, but it was around that time. Because like his one of his last matches was that tag match that fell apart on live TV with him and the Pope versus Punk and Benoit. And then they did the ECW title tournament the next week where he took on Punk and Benoit took on the Pope. And I'm not sure if Monty Brown ever wrestled again, or at least in WWE again, but that's the last match I remember him having.
That was his last ECW match because his I want to say his sister died, and
Yeah,
so
and
he left
he
to take
raised his
care of
niece.
her kids. Yeah,
And
and
WWE at the very least, continued to pay him for a while,
mhm.
while that was going on.
Yeah, and
So,
then he became a local, really good fitness instructor, made a lot of money that way. And plus he had his NFL pension.
so good job for you, Monty Brown, Alpha Male Marcus Von Cor. What the hell's his name? Marcus Corvon. That's what it
Yeah,
was.
Marcus Corvon.
Yes. All right. So also the show draws about 800 with about half paid, half paper. And this, okay. I could save this rant for next week when there's less stuff to rant about, but I'm just going to do it now. So apparently, there's a thought process going on because TNA is trying to limit the number of free tickets they're giving out to about 400 people. And this is leading to a slight uptick in the paid attendance because now it's about 400 as opposed to 300. However, there is some arguing going on backstage over this policy, saying that the reason the crowd isn't as hot for the next couple shows or the last few shows is because we're limiting the number of free tickets. Keeping in mind that the difference is between about 800 people on this show, next week's show, versus about 1,100 people when they normally pack in the free tickets. If you're telling me those 300 people are the 300 people that are making all the noise, then all that noise isn't worth it because these people aren't paying a dime. You know, sorry to burst people's bubble, but when you don't pay for your ticket, it doesn't matter if you like it or hate it. Sorry, not sorry. I've been to a bajillion wrestling shows in my life, and I have gotten free tickets to one show, and I had a friend comp me for two other shows. And so ultimately, while I enjoyed all these shows that I got in for free for, I would not consider it, I would not consider my opinion as being worthwhile because I did not pay for this. It's AEW did not make any money off of me when I got in for free for their shows. And the local indie, which by the way, the reason why I got in for free for the local indie is because I worked the hard camera. So, you know, it's not like I got in for free and just sat with my feet up on the guardrail. But still, you're getting like seriously, if that's the biggest fucking deal, like I'm sorry, this isn't TV where people are watching it and going, "Oh man, this crowd is insane. I want to be a part of this." This is a pay-per-view where you have to go out of your way to buy it. You're not going to
Mhm.
flip the channels and see a crowd losing their shit for an America's Most Wanted match and stop on the channel. You would have to literally buy it in advance. And we're at the stage of, I don't know if we're quite there yet, but we're closing in on the stage of digital cable replacing the over the air stuff. So you couldn't even watch it on the scrambled channel like I used to.
No, we're there.
Yeah.
In my
So if we're
area,
not,
we're there.
if we're not, we're pretty darn close to it. Because I remember when I moved out on my own, had my first apartment, I had to upgrade to get the digital cable box in order to buy pay-per-views. And that was 2004. So we're pretty much right there.
Yep.
Anyway, on to this week's show. Scott Hudson is back, and he's outside running into Jeff Jarrett, asking about his injuries from last week. Jarrett said he will not give Scott Hudson any updates, but if Legend and Russo want to play game with bats, then tonight it's his game and batter up. So do you know why Scott Hudson hasn't been here the last few weeks?
I'm assuming they didn't want to pay for his drive to his gas from Georgia.
Well, I mean, he probably just jumped in this car with Russo and company, but no, the main reason is because he had heat. And Goldilocks had been bitching, and we'll get to this next week because Goldilocks bitches about it next week. But
Yep.
Goldilocks has been bitching about her losing her job to Scott Hudson as a backstage interviewer, ignoring the fact that Scott Hudson is a billion times better than Goldie. And Goldie's pretty good, but Scott Hudson's better. There's, no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Anyway, remember a few weeks ago during one of his shows, and he was interviewing Tracy and Nurse Veronica, and he was like pulling up on his shirt collar because they're so hot. Then he was flustered and all that shit, and he threw it back to Tony and Bobby. Apparently, the geniuses in charge of this company didn't get the joke and thought that he fucked up on this pre-tape, and thus they were going to never book him again until somebody smartened them up.
And I'm pretty sure the people that smartened him up was Jarrett, Tanay, and Russo.
Scott Hudson.
Pretty much. Yeah, anybody with a brain.
Okay. So we had that opening interview with Jeff Jarrett. And I legitimately had to check to make sure I was watching the right show. Because the very next thing we saw was Glenn Gilberti coming to the ring with Johnny Swinger and Simon Diamond, Glenn Gilberti managing them, and they're coming out for their World Tag Team title match with America's Most Wanted. Where the fuck did this come from?
I have
Simon
no
and
idea.
Go ahead.
I have no idea, but I think Gilberti's still suffering from concussion symptoms, so he can't wrestle right now.
He's actually got a back injury, which
Okay. So he's injured, he's silent, so at least he could do something. Like Gilberti can talk. So
where the fuck?
I know Diamond can talk, Swinger can't.
Until he pretends to be stuck in the 80s. But where the fuck did this come from? Simon and Swinger were on one show last year, and up until last week, Glenn Gilberti was getting a main event heel push. And this week, with no warning, oh, by the way, not only was he in a main event feud for the world title, he then had an angle going where he was trying to reform Sports Entertainment Extreme by getting Mike Sanders to remove Shark Boy's mask. This week, with no warning, no heads up, Gilberti is not only no longer trying to reform SEX, he is now the leisure suit wearing manager of Simon and Swinger, and we're somehow supposed to know why the fuck this is happening.
Well, it was kind of the Shark Boy unmasking angle is stupid anyway, so this is a linear positive step, I guess.
Okay. So Gilberti was on commentary for this match and said the Triple X carried AMW to a match of the year candidate. I am already done with this show. They got the heat on Harris, while Gilberti is more annoying on commentary than anything Mike Sanders has ever done.
Yep.
Today randomly brought up that Negro Casas and Shocker no-showed this week's show. And I tried to find out what the story behind this was, but Dave and the Observer just said that for some reason Conan is getting the heat for them no-showing. I don't know what the hell the story behind that is, but I can tell you Shocker is going to be in, because Shocker has a little bit of a push in 2005, but I don't know anything about the rest of it.
I think probably something, their visas got held up or something. It's probably the closest explanation that we're going to get.
So Harris fights out of a double team. All three guys are on the ground. Harris makes the hot tag to Storm, and the referee, despite the fact that all three guys are on the ground and Glenn Gilberti is yapping on commentary, he somehow did not see Harris make the hot tag to Storm. And, you know, I don't even know. Of course, a minute later, when they got the real hot tag, the crowd did not react nearly as much as they did the first time. Storm went all X Division-y with a tope on Swinger and a crossbody on Simon. AMW used the heart attack on Swinger, but referee Andrew Thomas continued his selective enforcement of the rules and didn't count because both Harris and Storm were in the ring. That would be fine had seconds later both teams not gotten near falls while their partner was in the ring. AMW set up the death sentence, but Gilberti shoved Harris into the barricade and then hit Storm with a chair. Storm then kicked out of a double side Russian leg sweep, and Harris pinned Swinger after a spear. Now, I was legitimately shocked that when I read The Observer, Dave loved this match. When I read your comments on social media, you appeared to love this match. I'm getting to the point where I think America's Most Wanted are the early 2000s version of the Young Bucks. And I'm not saying that in a positive way. I'm saying that I didn't care for the Young Bucks in the early 10s when, to me, their matches came across as a parody of good tag team wrestling. Like, they were doing what they thought you're supposed to do in a tag team match, as opposed to it actually being part of the match. And that's what's happening with AMW here, where it's like, okay, they're like, well, as part of a good tag team match, you do the fake hot tag, you do the double down, you do the referee make sure that only one of the baby faces are in the ring. The problem is, and this is a TNA thing as much as anything else, every fucking AMW match, every fucking AMW match, both heels are constantly in the ring at all times while one of AMW is standing on the apron waiting patiently for a hot tag. And they always have the referee do the, oh, nope, you can't get in this. Only one member of AMW can be in the ring at the same time, while the entire match, like I said, is a 2-on-1 handicap match against the babyface in peril. And this is as much on, the referees as it is on AMW, because this is every fucking week. And I wouldn't even I would give AMW a pass and say that the referee needs to figure out what the hell he's supposed to be doing, except I remember hearing stories about how AMW basically ignores instructions by the road agents about how to do shit, and because they would rather do things a different way. And hence my comparisons from AMW to the Young Bucks. Now, I'm not saying this was a bad match, just I did not like this match as much as apparently everybody else did. I gave it a 4.0 out of 10 and said this was another example of why this is the most frustrating company in the history of wrestling.
I gave it a 7.5 out of 10. I thought this match was pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's because I like old school tag team wrestling with some of the screwy stuff happening. Remember, I watched a lot of WCW. So a lot of the tag team wrestling that we're seeing right now in TNA resembles tag team wrestling in like mid-90s WCW. And I mean, we go 93 on. Like you saw this with the Blondes versus the Horsemen. You saw this with Harlem Heat versus the Nasty Boys. Or the Blue Bloods or the Stud Stable. You get where I'm going.
I just like you're comparing AMW and Simon and Swinger to the Nasty Boys, which is not the biggest compliment to most people listening to this. But by the way, the Nasty Boys were a lot better than they ever got credit for, especially when they were when they were having to have a technical wrestling match, they could not do that. But when they got to have a brawl and a fight and whatnot, it was pretty good. But anyway, go ahead.
Like Slamboree 94, it was the Nasty Boys versus Cactus Jack and Kevin Sullivan.
With the other David Schultz as the referee.
Yeah.
The other David Schultz. It was
exactly, the other David Schultz.
It was neither Dr. D nor the guy that got killed in outside of Pittsburgh, or was it where was the Foxcatcher farm? Was it outside of Pittsburgh? Wherever it was.
No, this was former Broad Street Bully.
This is former Philadelphia Flyer David Schultz. There are too many David Schultzes somehow wrestling related.
Who knows? But the match was fine, and this does set up what's gonna be one feud throughout the summer. Which,
but, again, my issue isn't even that, because like my issue is always going to be these fucking AMW matches. Every single one of them is pretty much the exact same thing. It's like they're pretending to be have good tag team matches. Like I don't know. It's like, and the fake hot tag thing works once in a while, especially when you're in front of the same crowd of people every single week. When you do it every single week, it dies quickly.
Mm-hmm.
So we then get a Christopher Daniels video package, followed by one fucking shit show of a segment.
I have here written. Can I start it off and then I'll let you go?
Sure.
I want to talk about the Christopher Daniels promo. I love these Fallen Angel promos. Like, saying that sports entertainment was path to the goals that he said, and so on and so forth, and he's going to lead the unenlightened to the promised land. I like Fallen Angel Christopher Daniels. There's just something about pseudo-religious nutcases that I like in pro wrestling. And we got two of them. Granted, Christopher Daniels is the one that can actually wrestle. The other one is Father James Mitchell. but I'm all for it. I also have written here in my notes, this segment, let Aria rant. You can make dinner for about 30 minutes and she will still be going on this segment. So I'm going to go make dinner. Floor is yours.
I'm gonna say you probably got a couple of minutes here.
Just know that I agree with you in every single part of this segment. This is the worst 15 or so minutes TNA has put on in the past couple of months.
So Legend was in the ring with a baseball bat and a horribly fake New York accent, and he's wearing a Yankees shirt, and apparently, and it took me way too long to realize this, he was doing a Vince Russo impersonation for some ungodly reason. Because this is one of Vince Russo's big things. He likes doing the impersonation gimmick. You know, it worked one time when DX impersonated the Nation. It was actually funny. And then since then, it hasn't been. DX later impersonated the corporation. He then had Stevie Richards impersonating everybody on the WWF roster. And then when Lance Storm tells you this, when he joined WCW, before he ever had a match on Nitro, they had Rey Mysterio and Billy Kidman Rey Mysterio and Juventud Guerrera go out dressed like Lance Storm and Billy Kidman and doing a parody of it. So the first time Lance Storm's gear was worn on Nitro was by Rey Mysterio Jr. Just throwing that out there. And then Lance Storm got impersonated by the Misfits in Action. And there were more impersonation gimmicks than just that, but that's the four that pop into my head. And so Vince Russo loves people doing impersonations. And so he had total Canadian Joey Legend go out there and talk about how Vince Russo is the straw that stirs the coffee. And the way he was talking, I thought he was introducing Vince Russo. That's how bad this was at first. I thought he was introducing Vince Russo. It took me way too long to realize that he was talking about himself. He was calling himself Vince Russo. Then he introduces Jeff Jarrett, and out came Vince Russo wearing Jeff Jarrett's 1995 WWF gear with those straps that went down, with the white hat and the blinking jacket and all that shit. And this is when I realized apparently Legend was supposed to be doing a Vince Russo impression and did such a shitty job of it, I thought he was just pretending to be from New York. Russo did the worst Fargo strut of all time. I never appreciated how much talent it took to do a Fargo strut, and I say that as somebody who used to do it in the living room when they were 8 years old, after watching Ric Flair and Jeff Jarrett.
And this is from someone who watched Steve Keirn try to do it in '94. I thought Steve Keirn did it horribly. Then I saw Vince Russo.
Well, like everything else Russo does, this went on way too fucking long. And I've got a question for you, because Russo likes to say, bro, if this is real, this shit could have happened, bro. Well, if this is real, how did Vince Russo get Jeff Jarrett's gear? Just asking. And in case you ever thought Jeff Jarrett wasn't the most, didn't have like the best, most in shape body you've ever seen. Like, I get he isn't like a steroid freak or whatever, but in case you ever thought, man, Jarrett looks out of shape here, go watch Vince Russo wear that same gear. You'll have a new appreciation of how athletic Jeff Jarrett actually looks. So
Jarrett's in wrestler shape. Russo's in guy who takes swings at batting cages shape.
I wouldn't even say that. Russo was about to literally kiss Legend's ass when Jeff Jarrett decided now was the time to stop this. And I had to question, why would he bother stopping this? If a grown man wanted to kiss another grown man's ass and he didn't like either of them, let them kiss his ass. I actually if Jarrett really wanted to fuck with Russo, he would have stayed in the back and saw how long that was going to go for. If he took an extra 5 seconds, Legend's pants were going to be around his ankles. So that could have been interesting. Anyway, Jarrett ran in, Russo ran off, and Legend ran wild with fists to Jarrett. Jarrett picked up a conveniently placed office chair, which broke, so he grabbed a metal folding chair to beat on Legend through the crowd. Jarrett threw Legend off the bleachers, which Shanae said was 15 to 20 feet. But if that was the case, then Jeff Jarrett and Joey Legend are each about 14 feet tall. They continued to fight. They broke another office chair. Honestly, it may have been the same office chair that they tried to put back together, but maybe they should stop trying to use office chairs as weapons. Jarrett was bleeding and backdropped Legend onto two chairs and then did the stroke onto a chair. Jeff Jarrett then used his used wrist tape to try to tape Legend to the ropes. Now, thankfully for Jarrett, Legend was nice enough to hold his arms into place because it was painfully obvious that Legend's arms were not taped there. Like A, it was baggy, and B, again, it's loose. It's used wrist tape. If I dare anybody out there to tape your wrist, run around for 5 minutes, and then untape your wrist and then try to tape up something else with that used tape, it will not stick. So Jarrett went for the bat, so Russo ran down and got hit himself multiple times with the bat. Legend stopped pretending to be taped to the ropes and broke a guitar on Jarrett's face. Not over the head, by the way, straight to the face. Because that still wasn't enough, Legend then gave Jarrett a twisting neck breaker that for this week and this week only they call the Stone Cutter. Then, because that still wasn't enough, Russo held Jarrett so Legend could hit Jarrett with a bat. Finally, after what was at least 10 to 15 minutes of this, security ran in and broke it up, and Jerry Jarrett came down to check on his boy. I literally had to take a 20-minute break after watching that.
I have written here this could have been 5 minutes shorter and still wouldn't have been better. Like, this was bad from the start, bad in the middle, bad in the end. I can't find a way to improve this segment except for don't do it.
Honestly, take out that entire first 5 minutes and it would have been better. Just have Legend walk to the ring to cut a promo and Jeff Jarrett attacks him.
That improves
literally, it. I get that they took some guy that had never been on this show before. And to be honest, if they didn't tell you that he was just Joe in the WWF, would anybody know who the fuck this guy was? No, they wouldn't. And I used to watch fucking, Jacked and Metal every week, and I had no memory of Just Joe ever having a match. I just remember him doing, the backstage gimmick that he would do where he would talk all the shit to everybody, and that was it. And if you never would have brought that up on this show, I guarantee nobody would have fucking remembered that. But I get you want to take a brand new guy because you want to give something for Jeff Jarrett to do to keep him away from AJ Styles, which is a smart idea. And so you're bringing this new big motherfucker because he's Joey Legend. He's a big muscular motherfucker. He can kick some ass and take some names. And, I like the idea of it, but it's Vince Russo, so everything has to be sports entertainment-y. We had to have that stupid promo at the beginning instead of this just being about them fighting. That's all this fucking shit had to be about was two guys wanted to fight. Joey Legend injured Jeff Jarrett last week, so now Jeff Jarrett wants revenge. But instead, Joey Legend injured Jeff Jarrett last week, and now Jeff Jarrett wants to dress up like Vince Russo this week. Fuck that.
Now a palate cleanser.
So 20 minutes later. Go ahead.
So Hudson is backstage with Chris Sabin. Sabin says he won't give Kazarian a title shot because he's on a losing streak. Yes, apparently one loss is a losing streak. He is still shook from losing to Kazarian 2 weeks ago. And then he goes, if he proved himself in the 6-man, then maybe he'll get a shot. Possibly, depends. Maybe, I don't know. Can you repeat the question? You're not the boss of me now, and you're not so big. So now we get the 6-man. No, I'm sorry. Take that back.
No. Wait. I'll be honest. I was perfectly fine with that promo, except for Scott Hudson couldn't pronounce Kazarian's name. He kept rhyming it with Kazarian, like Caesarian. But yeah, it was whatever. I mean, it was fine for what it was. And he said Kazarian not only has to win the 6-man tonight, but then win 10 or 15 more matches, and then maybe get a title shot. And by the way, before we go to the match, we then got the same Elix Skipper video we saw last week, before Skipper temporarily joined commentary for this match.
Yeah, Skipper was like, we'll do the Skipper part now. Skipper was pissed off that he wasn't in this match. Like, he says he's the best pound for pound. He should be in this match instead of, and I agree. I mean, Boy Luke and Matt Striker in this match. I mean, we don't need them.
The number one contenders match for the X Division title featured, at least 2 guys who've never been on this show before. 1 guy who hasn't been on the show in a year. 1 guy who's had 1 match a couple of weeks ago and lost it. And Elix Skipper was just the World Tag Team Champions for most of the last 6 months. So he has a point. He should have been in this match. But, so it's Kid Romeo versus Matt Sydal versus Altar Boy Luke versus Delirious versus Matt Striker versus Frankie Kazarian. Altar Boy Luke, by the way, is better known nowadays as Luke Hawks. And there's like 10 people out there who just called him the champ, and a whole bunch of other people who are really confused that I just called him the champ. So I'm pretty sure Romeo came out using the same theme that Paul London was using a few weeks ago. It's that one that kind of sounds like the Main Event Mafia theme song.
No, Paul London came out to Kid Cash's old music.
Who was it that used the Main Event Mafia theme song?
Tony Mamaluke.
Was it?
I think so.
I don't remember him being on the show recently enough for that. It was less than a month ago. Anyway, after Kid Romeo used the theme that had sounds of the Main Event Mafia theme, Altar Boy Luke came out using the theme that Matt Sydal came out to. Then Delirious came out to the theme that Altar Boy Luke came out to. Then Matt Striker came out to the theme Delirious came out to. And then Kazarian used his own theme song. Yes, they just brought out the middle 4 people all to the same theme song. Now, a minute into this match is when we find out it's an elimination match. And with Delirious here, I think we still need video of ROH booking meetings where the other wrestlers try to understand what Delirious is saying. Because, he just speaks gibberish.
Blah, 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 blah.
Yes. And that somehow equaled booking Ring of Honor. Elix Skipper was upset that Tenay wanted to talk about the match, so he walked out. They kept calling Matt Sydal Sydal. And then we got the dive sequence culminating in Sydal doing a moonsault off the top rope onto the pile of cordwood waiting outside. His reward for being the last to die was being the first one to be eliminated when Romeo pinned him with the last kiss. Kazarian pinned Delirious with an electric chair drop. Romeo pinned Striker with an Emerald Fusion from the middle rope. And Kazarian pinned Romeo with the Wave of the Future for the win. Now, in case you are wondering what happened to Altar Boy Luke, I am too. But apparently, what happened, and I didn't even take note of this, I had to read about it afterwards, was Altar Boy Luke kicked out on a spot that he was supposed to be eliminated on, and even though he kicked out, the referee told him he had to go to the back. And, well, Altar Boy Luke has an excuse as to why he is still the rightful number 1 contender to the X Division title. I'll be honest, this was not the greatest catch-as-catch-can match I've ever seen. Everyone went a step too fast. Everyone was just trying to get their shit in. But you know what? after the last 20, 30 minutes of this show, this was the perfect match to come after that shitty segment we just saw. I gave it a 5.5 out of 10, which means, yes, I thought this was better than the AMW match.
I thought it was 7.5 out of 10. I thought it was just as good as the AMW match, although for different reasons. By the way, thanks for clearing up the Altar Boy Luke thing, because I had here Altar Boy Luke screwed up a spot, was supposed to be pinned but kicked out. Then the refs kick him out anyways.
Yes.
And I had to look up, does he stick around a little bit longer? And the answer is yes. I figure since Altar Boy, I'm guessing Altar Boy Luke sticks around is because he's only working for $50 a night. Or Negro Casas and Striker no show again.
Yeah, so, and I just looked it up while we were talking. He does wrestle once more that we actually watch.
Yep, so because we don't watch Explosion.
Yes, I don't know if that guy who was uploading them on YouTube is still uploading them or not. But I know at least quite a few of them are up there.
I mean, he better, because what else is Tom Green going to do?
So we got, after the match, Chris Sabin came out and said that Kazarian proved himself to be a worthy contender. So because of it, Kazarian will get his title shot right now. And that led to our next match, which was X Division champion Chris Sabin versus Frankie Kazarian. Sabin worked over Kazarian's ribs in and out of the ring. Kazarian went for a tope out of the ring, but Sabin turned it into a gut buster, which was a really neat spot.
It was.
They reversed each other's finishers until Sabin gave Kazarian a buckle bomb and then a future shock for the win. Even though this was like a 3-minute match, I still liked it. I gave it a 3.5 out of 10.
I was around the same lines as you. 4 out of 10, more of a segment than a match. And also continues the storyline of Sabin ducking Kazarian.
Yes. Backstage, Scott Hudson is standing over Jeff Jarrett, who is laying motionless on the ground. An ambulance is apparently on its way to the arena, and Legend decided that now was the time to run in and attack Jeff Jarrett some more. Gotta say, I was at a TNA show. Actually, was an Impact taping a few years ago. I think this was the one in Albany. Yeah, it was in Albany when I was there for Bound for Glory, and they had to hold up the show for like an hour because we're waiting for an ambulance to come, because you have to have an ambulance at the arena. And this is probably why, because, Jeff Jarrett had to wait for an hour for an ambulance, and, he got beaten up 2 more times on this show while waiting for a damn ambulance. Any thoughts?
No, it seems about right. Filler. Speaking of filler, so Lollipop's in the ring and wants to fight. Weird. Anyway, so Lollipop's in the ring and she challenges Tracy and Veronica to a fight. Tracy's not there. As a matter of fact, spoiler alert, Tracy doesn't show up for another 3-4 months. Show up again for another 3-4 months, and she'll be with Michael Shane, the incoming Michael Shane, and Shane Douglas.
I was unaware that that's why Tracy disappeared. Actually, you didn't say why Tracy just disappeared. You just said she did. But yeah. By the way, don't let Lollipop near a microphone ever again. And it took Nurse Veronica about 5 minutes to walk to the ring, and in that time, security ran in and broke it up.
Boo.
They're still the biggest baby faces on the show to me.
Well, that makes one of you.
Yes. So earlier today, Mike Tenay talked to Jim Mitchell about throwing fire at Raven and CM Punk. Both he and Shane Douglas hate Raven, but for different reasons. Mitchell doesn't like that Raven whines. Mitchell randomly started talking about the injury he got at the November to Remember 2000, when the little gimmick he uses to shoot fire out of his hand blew up, and he almost lost his fingers. It blew a hole in his stomach. He had to have major fucking surgery because of this. And Mitchell said he is very offended that when he watches TNA and Raven pretends to be devil worshiper, and he's going to teach Raven what real pain is. Now, do you remember that thing at November to Remember 2000 when his gimmick blew up and he almost lost fingers on his hand?
I looked it up. I actually looked this up because, and also he talks about it in various interviews.
It was on the Forever Hardcore documentary. I don't know if it was on a bonus feature or not, because I tried to skim through it and find it, but I didn't feel like watching the entire documentary and I couldn't find a Jim Mitchell talking head part on it. But yeah, and the best part is you could ECW, and this is after TNN. So like TNN had ended a month before this. But ECW sent in a camera guy to film the EMTs working on Jim Mitchell, and you can find this online on YouTube. And like police are basically telling the camera guys to get the fuck out of the way because they need to do, you know, emergency medical shit on Jim Mitchell. And it's like the funny thing is
Good job,
the
yeah.
comments are like, "Oh man, that police guy, like fuck him, like we're just trying to videotape." It's like it's a motherfucking serious medical situation. We don't need a camera in the fucking guy's face while they're trying to save his goddamn life.
And that actually aired during their syndicated show, by the way. They still had
Yes.
that.
Yeah. That's how we got the footage of it on YouTube because they aired it on the fucking TV show.
Ugh.
Oh boy. And it's funny because like Paul Heyman likes to talk about how, he knew that the hardcore extreme shit was done. And so like if ECW still would have been around in 2001, he was gonna bring in Bryan Danielson and CM Punk and Samoa Joe and all basically he's gonna bring in basically the ROH talent roster before ROH was even a thing, which would have it's just hilarious to think about it. But like here's a fact you watch shit like this, like, Ring of Honor, for all its faults, would not have fucking aired video of EMTs working on one of their guys after a fireball blew up their hand.
Kind of proves the point that Paul Heyman isn't the saint of pro wrestling that people claim he is.
I mean, don't get us wrong, Paul Heyman is very, very good, but especially at the end of the ECW thing, it's like he was burnt the fuck out. He was burnt the fuck out, and he needed to. He probably needed a year off, and of course he goes right into the WWF, and of course he couldn't have taken a year off because what was going on in ECW. But like in a perfect world, he should have taken a year off and let I don't even want to say Dreamer because Dreamer we found out when he booked OVW sucked at booking too, but put somebody in charge. Hell, he talks about Gabe Sapolsky was somebody who he was mentoring. He could have put fucking Gabe in charge for a year. The company couldn't have been any worse. Anyway, um, so you want to talk about this Julio and Alexis promo?
Can I just do like 30 seconds and we'll just get it over and done with?
Okay, sure, go ahead.
Okay, Julio hits ring, wants Shane Douglas. Shane finally has his Perfect Strangers theme. We have a match. It was okay. Shane Douglas wins 3 out of 10. James Mitchell comes out, wants to throw fire in Julio's face. Alexis tries to stop him, and instead we get violence gets women again. Alexis gets fire in face. Wunderbar, whatever, 3 out of 10.
So the only thing I would have added to that, by the way, I gave it a 1 out of 10. But the only thing I would have added to that was Julio called CM Punk one of his best friends. When the hell did that happen? Probably at the same time that Glenn Gilberti started managing Simon and Swinger. Uh, like CM Punk was the guy that they were ignoring and trying to tell to piss off for the last several weeks.
Friendship
Anyway,
grows when you get fireballs thrown.
but by the way, Shane Douglas did the worst inverted atomic drops of all time. It's like Shane has seen better days. He could not bend his body to give an inverted atomic drop. It's like it was just sad to see. And the finish was Alexis stood on the apron for like 30 minutes, and then we're supposed to be shocked that Julio ran into her. Backstage, Jeff Jarrett is finally being rolled into an ambulance, and so Legend, who only waits until the camera is pointed at Jeff Jarrett, showed up yet again to attack Jeff Jarrett and to turn over the stretcher. Jerry Lynn and AMW broke it up, and then D'Lo was seen choking Russo and dragging him away. Any thoughts on this?
It was a thing that happened. And speaking of things that happened,
Don Harris versus Shark Boy set up last week when Shark Boy embarrassed the Harrises by not allowing them to beat him up. It is literally, because they keep talking about how he embarrassed the Harrises. How did he embarrass them? They tried to beat him up and he ran away. Is that really embarrassing the Harrises?
Probably. It was also embarrassing enough for the Harrises. It got Mike Sanders out the door.
I got to tell you, if I ever met the Harrises and I didn't throw up in the meantime, I would ask them why that offended them so much. So, because Mike Sanders is gone, the job to remove Shark Boy's mask has now moved on to the Harris twins. And this entire match, Don kept trying to take Shark Boy's mask off. Shark Boy still didn't want him to, and Don won with a choke slam. After the match, both of the Harrises gave Sharky an H-bomb and then took his mask off, but Shark Boy channeled his inner The Bullet and wore a second mask underneath. I am not sure what the Harrises' problem is. Their goal is to take Shark Boy's mask, and at no point was showing Shark Boy's face ever the goal. So, in theory, they achieved their goal. They took Shark Boy's mask. There was never, like Glenn Gilberti never said, we need to show the world Shark Boy's face. He just said we needed to take his mask. And they did. They took his mask right here.
Yeah, because Glenn Gilberti wanted to create probably another awful luchador called Piranha Man.
Yeah, I would have said Shark Man, because that's the kind of creativity Glenn Gilberti has. But yeah, now that they have Shark Boy's mask, what will they do with it? Spoiler alert, nothing. I somehow gave that match a 1.5 out of 10, meaning that yes, I like that more than Shane Douglas versus Julio De Niro.
I didn't. But I gave it a 2 out of 10. I don't know why, because it's a squash match, essentially. Speaking of segments that I wish we could forget.
No, okay. You like this 3 Live Crew stuff. You get into this one here.
All right, so we have 3 Live Crew doing what is Weekend Update, but they called it Weekday Update. And I have written here, and I think I messaged this to you. I am at the point where I'd rather they swap the 6-man match they normally have an explosion with this. Have them squash some fools.
That's what you said for next week's segment.
Oh, I said it for this week's segment, too. Next week's is worse, by the way.
They made a joke about the Kobe Bryant sex scandal, and I literally had to look that up because I'm like, I thought that didn't happen until like 2005. But no, it literally just happened. This is July 9th, and the Kobe Bryant sex accusation where wasn't like he allegedly raped a woman in a Colorado hotel room, that came out on July 1st. So 8 days later, we are using that for comedy. By the way, they also managed to plug the WWE Vengeance pay-per-view coming up, which, by the way, did approximately 25 times the buys of this show. Because they were mocking the fact they were doing Stephanie McMahon versus Sable on the Vengeance pay-per-view. They also did Kurt Angle versus Brock Lesnar versus The Big Show, and Eddie Guerrero versus Chris Benoit, and Haas and Benjamin versus Rey Mysterio and Billy Kidman. I guarantee, even with that Stephanie Sable match, and there was also the Vince McMahon Zach Gowen match on that show, I guarantee that Vengeance show was 1,000,000 times better than this TNA show.
Can confirm. I absolutely can confirm.
By the way, and because once again the real stars are in WWE, we then went to D'Lo Brown, who screamed, "It doesn't matter where Vince Russo is."
I
And
give
then
D'Lo
AJ,
credit. I'll give D'Lo some grace on this because he was with the Nation. He was in the Nation with Rock when he did this in the Nation.
yes, and thus it was cool when The Rock did it. It is not cool the second time somebody does it. Like when Juventud Guerrero. Remember when Vince Russo
Yeah.
had Juventud Guerrero go out and do The Rock impersonations? Like it's not interesting the second time somebody does something. Unless you go so absurdly over the top, like when Shark Boy was being Stone Cold Steve Austin, like
Yeah.
that was a good example of comedy, or an example of good comedy, because it was so absurdly over the top that it was actually funny. And
You also had
surprisingly,
Shark Mom and Shark Dad.
Shark Boy is like literally like the only funny person, actually funny person on this goddamn show. Um, but yeah. AJ Styles ran up, they shoved each other and got held apart. And while thankfully D'Lo Brown has never said this again, at least as of July 16th, D'Lo Brown does have a t-shirt now that says Notorious DLB.
Dear Lord, please help us all. I had that written down near the end. I said that out loud when I was watching next week's show because I didn't notice the back of the shirt.
Yeah,
until
he turned
like, so
around
it's like,
during,
oh dear God.
he turned around when he got into the shoving match with AJ.
Yeah, I didn't see that.
Yeah.
I didn't see the back of the shirt.
So then we get the next match, which is Kid Cash with The Abyss versus Jerry Lynn. And I wrote, does this mean the Jerry Lynn Just Incredible feud is over? Apparently not, because according to Don West, he challenged Just Incredible to a last man standing match, and Credible said no. So why was Lynn allowed to book a Russian chain match a few weeks ago without needing Credible's approval, but apparently does need approval for a last man standing match?
So I think Credible took the hint. It's like, nah, I'm
brah.
good, fam.
Nah, brah. Wrestle Kid Cash instead. So they told us they at least have tried to come up with a reason why Scott Hudson is doing backstage interviews instead of Goldilocks. And apparently it's because AJ Styles feels like Goldilocks is too condescending and he's the world champion. So wouldn't that mean that Goldilocks just doesn't do his interviews? Why does he have power over if Goldilocks interviews Kid Cash, for instance?
Your guess is as good as mine.
Anyway,
I'm assuming Goldilocks was doing something musically besides this right now. Maybe working on an album or something.
So Cindy, are you sitting down?
Yeah, I'm sitting down. What's up?
Okay, good. Jerry Lynn and Kid Cash are better than Don Harris or a well past his prime Shane Douglas.
Oh God, who could have seen that coming?
So Jerry Lynn used a tilt-a-whirl butt breaker on Cash, and Cash sold his back, which does make sense because if you land on your ass, you do get a shockwave going up your back. So, hey, botch spot or not, it made sense to sell your back. Lynn avoided Abyss a few times but got caught in a shock treatment. Cash broke out the Iron Claw, but he is no David Von Erich, and Lynn is no Buddy Roberts. So Lynn bridged up. Kid Cash did the Jeff Hardy whisper in the wind, and the referee stood so close, he got kicked in the head. It is his fault. Lynn hit a TKO, so Abyss hit the ring, and in his third week or fourth week on the show, Abyss took a tornado DDT from Jerry Lynn. And then, with the referee watching, Lynn gave Abyss a Hurricanrana. But then Just Incredible ran in and caned Lynn, letting Cash win. Now, I get, because, hey, I'm sorry, not Kid Cash, but Abyss, this is kind of the story of Abyss, where he's very generous in the ring with the people he's wrestling. And that's great, except the fact that 1 month into your run, that I think he's had one match so far,
with
maybe
Eric
two.
Watts.
Yeah.
One
This
match
is
that
not-
we watched with Eric Watts. He's had a couple on
Yeah.
Explosion.
Okay. It's not time yet for him to be, taking the moves of the guys a foot shorter and 100 pounds lighter than him. And this is with all the love to Jerry Lynn, but Jerry Lynn should not have been booked to, give Abyss a hurricanrana. I love Jerry Lynn like he signed my mortgage, but he doesn't need to be giving Abyss a hurricanrana a month into his run. I still gave this match a 5.0 out of 10.
Exactly what I gave it, 5 out of 10.
Hey, Sonny Siaki, actually, I did give it a 5. Never mind. My screen was a little schmutzy when I scrolled it down. A Sonny Siaki video package aired next. I'm sure he said Sonny Siaki 15 or 16 times. Cindy is here with the real number, I'm sure.
Nope, didn't care.
Okay. This is how you can tell we're really serving the bottom of the barrel here. When even Cindy doesn't care enough to count the number of times Sonny Siaki says Sonny Siaki. All right, so from here we get quite the segment on a show where quite the segment defined most of what we've seen. Mike Tenay was in the ring and introduced the winner of the Hard 10 tournament, the Sandman. Now, the trophy that they came out with had nameplates for 4 potential winners, meaning that they were intending this to be an annual event. Spoiler alert, this was the first, last, and only Hard 10. Sandman limped to the ring in a nicer t-shirt and pants than he would normally wear, and he vowed to drink beer out of the trophy. And, well, he filled that cup up with 3 beers. So apparently it holds 36 ounces of beer. And he chugged some
Quite a
beer
cup.
to the approval. I'm sorry, go ahead.
That's quite a cup.
Yes. He chugged some beer to the approval of the fans, spilled about half of it on the mat trying to get out of the ring, and then shared some beer with the fans. Then a very fat man in a very ill-fitting suit ran out and attacked the Sandman. For some reason, trademark, this led to the debut of Don Callis. Yes, that Don Callis. And this Don Callis had a lot of hair, too, which, is just funny because he's bald now. Anyway, so Don Callis, after ECW died, went and got his MBA, a Master's in Business Administration. So he went out to go get a real job, and after he did that, he went and signed with TNA. But even though he went and got an MBA, he came back to wrestling to bring in Edward Chastain, who is the very fat man in the very ill-fitting suit. Callis said that hardcore wrestling was over, and not in the way that it's very popular, just that it's done. It's over. Chastain threatened to use a garbage can, but Callis stopped him so he could put the Hard 10 trophy in the trash can. Now, I was half expecting Jim Mitchell to come out and light it on fire, but nope. Russo was showing incredible restraint, keeping fire to only one angle on the show. But yeah, if you don't remember Edward Chastain, don't worry. There's a reason you don't remember him.
Because he fucking sucks.
And shockingly, he is here more than 1 week. Because I know of one match he has, and it's not the match he has next week.
Well, Disgraceland got 2 weeks, so
well, we have to get. Apparently, everybody who can't wrestle gets 2 weeks.
Right.
Remember the fucking Briscoes got 1 week, and they had a match. I think it was with the Hot Shots that went 60 seconds when Malice ran in and kicked everyone's ass. And that was the first, last, and only appearance of Mark and Jay Briscoe in TNA, at least until like 2021, during that period when ROH was not officially dead, but dead. And so a bunch of ROH guys showed up in TNA and did the Honor No More stable and yada, yada, yada.
That was a bad stable.
I enjoyed all that stuff. And I thought it was really interesting. Like, 'cause this was before TK bought ROH. So, like, that was when I think Jonathan Gresham came in to defend the ROH title. That was when Deonna Purrazzo defeated Roxanne Perez for the ROH Women's title on Impact. I'll be honest, I like how all that went. I thought it was really interesting.
No, I thought the storyline was great. It's just the stable sucked.
But it was what Eddie Edwards was it Eddie Edwards? Yeah, yeah, it was Eddie
Slapnut
Edwards. What was that?
Slapnut Edwards.
Well, it was Eddie Edwards, the Kingdom, PCO, and wasn't there one other person?
Who's it starts with a V.
Vince. Was it Vincent? Was
Yeah,
Vincent in
Vincent.
there?
Yeah, Vincent.
Why do I not remember Vincent being there? Anyway, so that was that. And then we get, oh, do you have anything else you want to say about Edward Chastain and the debut of Don Callis?
Glad to have Callis because that's a manager who knows what the hell he's doing.
I'm kind of trying to remember when Callis leaves. Like, because I know he's at least there till January, but I don't.
He's there until
I don't think he's
March.
there when I was gonna say I don't think he's there when they go to Fox Sports Net, and that's in
No,
June.
he's gone. He's gone.
Yeah.
He's gone well before then. Spoiler alert. He's there when we get the worst of Jeff Jarrett that we're gonna watch.
I think he was. I think like Scott Hudson, he has a real job, and he was able to take off the 1 day a week to come do TNA.
Yeah.
And that's about it. So then we got Behind the Paint Part 2 with Sting next. I'll be honest, this should have been one long ass thing. And I get the point is they're trying to give you a reason to buy more pay-per-views to see more Interview with Sting. But it's like these things are all like 1 minute long, maybe 90 seconds, and it's like they're so disjointed. Like this week he said that Ric Flair was his favorite opponent. They're doing word association basically. Ric Flair is his favorite opponent. Dusty Rhodes was the most charismatic wrestler ever. Eric Bischoff, he gave all the credit in the world to him. He called Piper a talented character. Bret Hart had a great finishing hold. Warrior was bizarre. And then he said both Vince McMahon and Hulk Hogan were the greatest chess player of all time. And then called the internet both good and bad. Anything else
I'm kind of done with these. No, because you exactly covered it.
It's the second week. There's at least 4 of these. And
There's
it's like
5.
Oh, Jesus Christ. And the funny thing is, it's like I was sitting here like when they said, oh, let's go to Behind the Paint with Sting, I'm like, man, we're still doing these? And they're like, this is part 2. I'm like, this is only part 2? I feel like I've been watching this longer than the show has been on the air. And then I remember like when they do a DVD release at some point, like I don't remember what it was, but one of the features on it was all of the interviews with Sting put together. So you got, I guess, a 5-minute interview with Sting on that DVD.
Yeah, what was that Sting DVD? Behind the Paint or something?
Something like that, but that wasn't until after he came in 2006.
Sting comes in off and on. We'll see Sting.
Yeah, but he comes in like I know he has a match with Jeff Jarrett at the end of this year after Jarrett turns back heel, spoiler alert. And then he randomly comes in as a guest referee for a match next year. And then after that, I think, is when he goes back away and doesn't come back until 2006 when they sign him to the 1-year deal. That just never stops happening.
Right, because Spike TV picks up that tab.
So Scott Hudson interviewed Trinity because he was supposed to wrestle AJ Styles, but AJ apparently wasn't in the talking mood. Trinity said she doesn't owe an explanation to anyone as to why she turned heel, which, everyone gets frustrated when WWE turns people heel, and it's always because of the fans. Well, this is the Vince Russo trope. Everyone turns heel, and they don't owe anyone an explanation as to why they turned heel. That's the Vince Russo trope. So next week, Raven will return. And I will say that they said last week that Raven will return this week, but, no Raven. We're also going to have Jerry Lynn versus Just Incredible in a last man standing match. So I guess Credible finally agreed to that step. Shark Boy and New Jack versus the Harrises, and Jeff Jarrett versus The Legend. One of those three matches are really fucking great. And one of those matches did not live up to the expectations I gave it.
Gee, I wonder which one is right in the middle. Tune in next week to find out.
Yes. So then we get our main event, which is the NWA World Champion AJ Styles versus D'Lo Brown. As I mentioned before, AJ Styles and D'Lo Brown had some match that TNA put up on their website for free in like 2004 that I loved, and I fell in love with TNA by watching it. It was not this match. In fact, I'm pretty sure, because they don't have that. Actually, they don't have that many matches, it turns out, as many as I thought they did. It's the match they have in 2 weeks is the match that got put up on the TNA website. So we'll see in 2 weeks if it meets my long-term, lifelong expectations. Maybe I shouldn't watch the show in 2 weeks just because I don't need to have my passion killed even more than it already is. So remember
I don't
last
think it's the match
week,
in 2 weeks.
the best of three falls match? Are you sure?
That is the match that happens in 2 weeks.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. And you're saying you don't think that's the match that I loved?
Maybe it's the cage
match. There aren't too many
match.
other options. I thought we had the cage match. AJ Styles got disqualified in the cage match.
They had an actual cage match.
I'm pretty sure it wasn't a cage match, but I guess we'll see. I guess we'll see what I actually loved or not. Anyway, so remember last week the stipulation was that AJ Styles was going to have Vince Russo in his corner, and D'Lo Brown was going to have an equalizer in his corner. Well, I guess they couldn't book whatever talent they were thinking of, or maybe this was the plan all along, and it was just disappointing. They brought out the flimsiest looking rooster cage you've ever seen in your life, and red shirt security rolled out this tiny cage that Russo was then locked into. So
I had to hear it look like a chicken coop, so we're not far off.
Yeah. We get the match. Styles tripped D'Lo and then somehow blocked a leg drop. I like to point out that no one ever blocked the Hogan leg drop. So AJ Styles, AJ Styles is onto something here. D'Lo knocked AJ over the guardrail, then dragged him under the guardrail, which really tells you something about how skinny AJ Styles is, because there's not a lot of room under those guardrails. And I say this as a fat person. AJ broke out the Fosbury flop, which Tenay named on TV. And I got to say, maybe Don West came up with it backstage, but Don West always gets credit for coming up with the phrase Fosbury flop. But Mike Tenay is the one that called it that here on TV for the first time. Trinity ran to the ring and did Jeff Hardy's Whisper in the Wind to D'Lo, making her the second person tonight to do that move. AJ accidentally gave the referee a Pele kick. D'Lo used both the Sky High and the Lowdown. Sonny Siaki came in, hit D'Lo with a cane and a Siakalypse before AJ pinned D'Lo with his very own frog splash. I got to tell you, that was a hell of a frog splash by AJ Styles. And I kind of wish he would have kept doing that.
I mean, it would be perfect heel heat. I mean, you're feuding with D'Lo Brown. Why not use his finisher against him?
Even after this, like at some point he does the springboard 450 as a kind of a secondary finisher. And it's like, I'll be honest, who knows, maybe it didn't feel that good. Because, there's some moves, it just, it sucks to give. So maybe you're just like, you know what, this isn't my thing. Let me stick to what I can do here.
Yeah, but doesn't RVD sell like he gets hurt with the frog splash?
Oh, yeah. Van Dam sells that move better than anybody who ever takes it. By the way, while this was not the amazing AJ Dillon match I remember, it was still pretty good. I gave it a 5.0 out of 10. After the match, Trinity let Russo out of the cage, and which made me ask if Trinity had the key the whole time, why didn't she let him out earlier? They put D'Lo in the cage, locked it, and then Russo tried to break it with a bat. Doesn't that defeat the purpose of locking him in the cage if you're trying to break it open?
I think it's like you know how some assholes, they have a dog in a kennel and they beat on the door with a bat or something? It kind of reminds me of that. You're taunting the caged animal. You're like, hey, you can't get me. Thwap, thwap, thwap.
By the way, this is a flimsy AF cage too, so it's like,
God, this
hey,
is one of the worst built cages I've seen in my life.
I was gonna say, hey, Vince Russo did not need help to get out of this cage, and yeah.
Oh, I gave it a 5.5. This match, by the way. Yeah. Oh, well, that good show streak lasted long, didn't it? 2 shows.
Hey, it made it 2 weeks, which is almost better than the normal run of 1 week in a row at best.
Yeah.
So at the end, we have match quality 3.62 as an average for the show. Overall enjoyment 3.5. The streak of pretty good shows ends at 2. However, after taking 2 lengthy breaks just to get through the first hour of the show, because I forgot to mention, I took another break before the Julio and Shane Douglas match. The second hour was at least good enough to not need to take a break while watching. Future build 3.5 out of 10. Nothing next week sounds exceptionally interesting. If I hadn't seen the first 3 Jerry Lynn Just Incredible 2-minute matches, I might be interested in that, but oh well. And that gives us an overall rating of a 3.54.
In TNA parlance, it's above average.
Which is just sad, and really, really fucking sad.
Yeah. You know how I cleansed my palate after watching this show?
By watching Ring of Honor from 2003?
No, something better. If you have Amazon Prime Video, there's a channel called Funny Favorites. It's done by Warner Brothers Discovery, and all this month is old episodes of Love Connection.
Interesting.
I mean, think about it. Some of those stories that you hear on that show, chef's kiss.
Oh, Lord.
So if you're listening to this show and you're tired of watching bad wrestling, watch Love Connection.
I watched Ring of Honor Revenge on the Prophecy with, by the way, main event, AJ Styles and Amazing Red won the ROH tag team titles from Christopher Daniels and Xavier. 100 times better than anything they've done with Amazing Red on this show. And anyway, that is going to do it for this week. Anything other than Love Connection? Anything you want to plug?
Shapewear, because now I could actually wear pants normally now without having to stretch them all over my big fat stomach.
Fun. So go buy Shapewear, go watch Love Connection, and hey, while you're at it, go watch some Ring of Honor from 2003. It's good shit. But thank you all for listening. Hope you all enjoyed the show, and we'll talk to you again in 7 days.